Greetings, how are you guys doing? I'm trying to get my little camera action right here. Um, if you all have been tuning in, then you know throughout this week I have been interviewing Black fathers, the Conversations with Fathers series as we lead up to Father's Day. Okay, I see you're here, Eddie. You guys are just doing a great job joining in here. How you doing?
Hey, good evening. How are you?
I am great. Glad to have you on here. Haven't connected
I'm
with
glad
you
to
in a
be here.
while. Hope all is well in your neck of the woods.
Wonderful. Yes, yes, yes.
Good.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate this. Thank you for thanking me for this.
You're welcome. Welcome. Always a pleasure to have you on board. So we're gonna dive right on into this. I'm gonna need you to give me all your business up front. I'm gonna ask you your information like I'm the feds or something. I need your name. I'm getting your fatherhood profile together because as we have these conversations, different people are gonna. I think everybody can relate overall, but with the details,
Okay.
some of your details are gonna match somebody specifically who's watching this. So, if you can tell me your name, your age, your marital status, how many children you have, and their ages and genders.
All right. So I'm Edward L. Fairley. I am 36 years old. I have three children. I'm married. I will be married for 15 years come October. And my children, I have two boys and one girl. My oldest son is 19 years of age. My daughter is 11 years old, and my baby boy is 5.
All right, that's awesome. Got a nice little spread between the youth there.
Yeah,
Okay,
yes.
so my next question I want to know, Eddie, is what was your relationship like with your father growing up, and how did that influence you as a dad?
Well, I didn't meet my father until I was 12. So I wasn't raised with my father. And even after I met him, uh, I'm originally from New Jersey, but I had migrated to Virginia. So even when I met him, it was short lived, and our relationship was more on the phone than it was on a day to day basis. How that impacted me as a parent now, I don't know. I wasn't that child that felt like I lacked something. My life was just set up the way that it was supposed to be. So I never went through that stage of, I wish I had a dad, or man, it would be different if I had a dad. Um, so honestly, I don't think my dad not being there really impacted me as a father now, but he has contributed to who I am now as a person, not necessarily as a father. But um, I don't know. I don't think me being raised. I literally cannot think of a time where I was like, man, I wish I had a dad, or I missed out on something because I didn't have a dad around.
So, did you have other male role models or positive male figures in your life?
No, I didn't. And what's interesting about that is my mother raised me as a single parent, and I always found it easy to get her a Father's Day card, but I had a hard time getting her Mother's Day card. Because the Father's Day cards aligned with how she raised me versus how she was as a mother. Now, what's interesting about what you just said is, or the prior question is, I felt that I lacked a mother having my mom around, but I did not feel like I lacked a father not having a father around. My mom was not that lovey-dovey, you go hug her and she's gonna, oh, it's gonna be okay, kiss your boo-boo. That wasn't her. So when I saw that in other mothers, I aspired to have that. But it was very, very easy for me to find Father's Day card. I never bought my father a Father's Day card. I always bought my mom a Mother's Day and a Father's Day card, but it was very difficult for me to find a Mother's Day card.
Okay, so we're gonna unpack some things here. My last
Yeah.
conversation ended
Let's
up,
do
you
that.
know, we went. The previous ones kind of stayed on fatherhood, but the last one kind of veered off a little bit, and it was cool because it was
Okay.
very relevant.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna ask you a question: do you think that because mom was playing the role of mom and dad, that was the reason why, you know, and she had a son by herself, that she felt she had to be kind of tough, or was it just
I
her
think it's
person?
the. I think it's a couple things. One, um, yeah, yes, it was her personality. Two, uh, at that time, she was with the Nation of Islam. Discipline and all that was no joke. And I'm born in Patterson, raised in Jersey City. So she was trying to protect me from them streets, and she was no nonsense when it came to anything. And so she was very, very tough. And that was with all of us, not even my sisters. So I'm the baby of five, but I was raised with me and my sisters and my mom. So she was. I think that was a combination of the Nation of Islam as well as just how she was and just not allowing me to be, for lack of a better term, a punk.
Got you, got you. So my next question to you would be: you said that your father was not around as a positive male influence, and that you didn't have others. So what was it in you that, because I know you, and I know that you
Mhm.
are heavily involved in the lives of your children as well as being a great husband. So what was it inside of you? Because what happens a lot of times, it seems to be one of two ways: I didn't have the example, so I'm not able to do it, or I had the example, and or I didn't have the example, and I'm going to make sure that I'm not that same way. So what propelled you to be the man that you are when you didn't have that example?
You know, I'm a lot like you in the sense that I like to kill stereotypes. So I'm intentional about doing it. Um, and what's crazy is I remember it like it was yesterday. Um, when I was 6 years old, something in my spirit told me to watch my mother and do the opposite. And I listened to that voice. And so my upbringing wasn't the best when it came to her, but I just watched her and I did the opposite. But when I got older, that voice came back after I graduated high school, which that did not happen for my mom. And that voice said, "See what that got you?" And I was like, "Yeah." And it said, "Now I want you to watch what most people do and do the opposite." And most people didn't have fathers around. Most people watch TV, so I stopped. Most people didn't like reading, so I did. And it made me study a lot of people, and it also shifted my mindset about my mom and helped me understand why it was easy for me to find Father's Day cards for her, because she was the opposite of what I thought moms typically should or would be. So it helped me to see people as individuals for one. And I don't know why, but I always wanted to be married and I always wanted to have children. And when I got older, I always wanted to see what the product of my parenting would be.
Mm-hmm.
So that is where my passion and stuff comes from, because I want to see the product of my teaching, and the fact that when I was being raised by my mom, I said I would do it the opposite way that she did, or I wouldn't do it that way. So I wanted to see what that would result in when I became a father myself.
Interesting. So you seem to be very in tune with yourself, because a lot of people are running away, you know, from themselves, and
Yeah,
so
yeah,
and doing everything they possibly can not to have to sit still and be
yeah,
with self. So you've
yeah.
been in tune with yourself, it seems, since a young age.
Intentionally now, but I didn't understand why I listened to it, because that makes absolutely no sense for a 6 year old to say I'm going to do the opposite of what mom does because a voice told them to. we're usually influenced by our environments, and my mom was the only thing that I really had, especially at that time frame. That was either around the time I was in Haiti, or no, it was around the time I was in Haiti. So that is what, to listen to that and take it as truth. It is nothing but God.
But wait, you just can't throw out when I was 6 and in Haiti. So you
Okay. All right. So let me give you all some backstory on a lot of things that probably won't make sense to you all. So let's start with my father. Why I wasn't raised by my father, and why I when I introduced myself as Edward L. Fairley.
It's a
I'm not a
powerful
junior.
story, y'all. Tune in.
I'm not a junior because of the L. My father does not have a middle name. Okay. But my father's name is Edward Fairley. My father, when I was 2 years old, he tried to kill my mom. He stabbed my mom 9 times in the back, trying to kill her because she decided she did not want to be with him any longer. He was at that time, I think, 15-year minister of a church. And so with that, my mom lived, thank God. And interestingly enough, she escaped when he jumped out of the closet when he snuck into her home, but she left me, so she went back to get me, and that's what got her stabbed. So because of that, he ended up in prison. He was in prison for, I believe, 7 years, and he got out for good behavior. So he was sentenced for 7 years, but he got out for good behavior. The year that I turned 6, coincidentally, was the year my father got out of prison. So my mom would never admit this, but clearly she was running. Her then Haitian boyfriend was going back home to Haiti, so we ended up going back to Haiti with him. So I left New Jersey as a city boy at like 6 to end up in Haiti to get away from my father, who was getting out of prison in New Jersey. Haiti did not work. That male experience did not work. It actually left us pretty much stranded in a garage where we had to fend for ourselves for majority of the time there. And after that year was over, we ended up coming back to the U.S. Clearly, we're not going back to New Jersey because that's where my father is. That landed us in the state of Virginia, where I am now. So that is the story between me being in Haiti. That's also the story by me stressing L, because if you research with all the things that I have going on, books, company, things of that nature, when people research me, if they just put in Edward Fairley, unfortunately, they're going to see my father just unfortunately did it again. He stabbed another woman 27 times, face and torso, while running a big church in New Jersey about 5 to 7 years ago. So now he's doing a 22-year stint. So anytime someone Googles me without putting the L, they're going to see the big story about my father, who did the stint or is doing the 22 years now in prison. So that's why I was in Haiti.
Yeah, that's a very I guess I'd say powerful story, and I've heard it before, but it still impacts me to hear it again. So again, this conversation is kind of veering off the path again, but I still
I
feel
try to keep it. I try to keep it. That's
no,
why
but
I
it's
didn't bring
not
up
you,
anything.
because I could ask you a fatherhood question, but I'm gonna ask you something kind of based off what you said. There are two things there that I want to know as a result of that. That's a lot to deal with at a very young age. And nonetheless, I know you to be a very optimistic person. Um,
Yeah.
and so it was a lot to deal with coming from your mother and your father. And so you're
Mm-hmm.
optimistic, but then also I've met people, and we're talking about black men right now, who may have had fathers who were not the best fathers, and they struggle with, I don't want to be like my dad. I don't want to end up like my dad. Did you ever deal with that, wrestle with those types of emotions, and how were you able to maintain such a positive outlook on life, and then go on to be a positive husband and father and all of those things?
That's an excellent question. Yes, I did wrestle with that. Only thing I wrestled with that was I had a very, very bad temper. So my biggest fear, and the thing that I would always say is I don't want to be like my father, is because of my temper. I'm like, I don't want to be so angry that I could inflict that type of pain on someone, or go into rage. So that was my only struggle. And to be quite honest with you, I did not lose that till probably 7 years ago, where me and my wife had that conversation. She said, "You're not like him. Stop trying to, stop asking or questioning yourself. You're nothing like that."
Shout out to the wife.
But you bring up my optimism, and I appreciate that. I haven't always been like that. Half of my life, I was very, very pessimistic. And I really can't tell you what caused the shift, but people would point out how pessimistic I was, but I was very angry. I think because of rejection, had very low self-esteem. And with that, for some reason, I decided to look at things in a positive light. But with living half of your life as a pessimist, you don't lose that skill. So with me adding the optimism to it, it made me balanced, because I decided to look at things from an optimistic standpoint, but I still could see how it could go wrong. So that allowed me to look at things holistically and make an educated decision based off of the situation. So in the end, just like anything else, it's a decision and a shift in your perspective. So because I can see the optimistic outlook and I lean towards that, that allows me to go into it correctly. But because I see the negative or pessimistic aspect of it, it allows me to go with it, or go along with it with caution, knowing that it's a possibility. So I will make sure that I go about it with that in mind, so that I'm careful in my choice.
Got you, got you. I appreciate the transparency. Again, I have really, I see so much value in speaking to you brothers, and you all being open and vulnerable about your experiences and about your emotions, and not being a brick wall, and being a model for other men to see that, yes, you know, black men have emotions, black men are human, black men care, black men feel pain, joy, hurt, triumph,
Yeah.
all of the gamut of emotions. And we as a community have born this thing of, you got to be so strong. And you do. You know, life requires strength, but at the same time, we are all humans. And so I'm glad to hear my brothers reveal this side of yourselves.
Well, what's interesting about what you say is I think it's stronger to be vulnerable enough to cry.
Yes.
Or be transparent than it is to bottle it up, because you're not being honest with the way things are. And what happens is with you pushing everything down, that's what causes you to snap and explode. So I'm intentional about being open and honest and transparent about what's going on, so that I don't allow things to build up to where I eventually will snap. Because I have done that in the past.
It's a false sense of strength. You know, the social paradigm that is, you show no emotion. You put that, game face on all the time, and you never can be vulnerable. You never can express your humanity to no one, not even yourself. Yeah.
But it's also a force. It's a form of bondage too.
It is.
And you miss out on so many opportunities to get help because you try to act like you have it all together, and that's crazy. It's ridiculous even. So
it is. And we, again, we have to define what is right for our communities and what is real. We just talked about this in the last interview, and not let society tell us what that is. I'm gonna run to some comments real quickly here. Hey, Chris. Victor said he too saw a lot of what his parents did and decided young to do and want the opposite. So you got
That's awesome.
a like mind there.
All
And
right, good.
hey, Aunt Teresa, how you doing? Got my auntie on here. So moving back to the fatherhood thing, I'm going to ask you, what are some of the most challenging things that you've dealt with as a father?
Wow. Okay, so now this is gonna be more explanation here. The only thing that I could think of that was challenging as far as that has been challenging for me as far as fatherhood is co-parenting. So for those who were doing the math in the beginning, when I said I'm 36 with a 19-year-old son, uh, I was in my son's life since he was 2 years of age. I don't do the stepfather thing. That's my child. So that was probably that has been the most difficult thing was co-parenting, pouring into my at that time baby boy. I still call him my baby boy. And then him having to leave to go with his dad, his biological father, and just dealing with them trying to pour in negative things about me, and then having to retrain what's going on with him. And what and this, now you might get me to cry on this show, is because even at the expense of him being a better person, um, the attacks or trying to make me out to be a bad person just so that it could be the opposite of what it is that I was trying to instill in him. So having to retrain that and go over that is probably the hardest thing about parenting, because it's like, it's a parent. I want what's best for him. And to make a decision or decisions just so that you can say that you've done the opposite of what I've done, uh, even at the expense of the betterment of him, that's probably the most challenging. Nothing else is challenging about fatherhood to me.
Now that's a very interesting and touching perspective. Now that your son is coming of age, do you think that he's kind of able to recognize himself what was going on there, or is that
No,
still
I
yet to
actually,
come?
the answer to that question is yes and no. I'll explain why I say yes and no. I say yes because that's still where he would go for his influence or even his guidance. But, and this is probably what's going to cause the tears to flow, when he struggles with something or it's hard for him, then he comes to me. When his back is against the wall and he's about to fail at something, that's when he comes to me. So finding the silver lining. That means he's gone to all of his influences, who he would want to be his assistants, which would be his dad, which is understandable. Um, and the other side of his family. But after they fail, he knows that I won't. So he'll come to me for his guidance in that particular issue or struggle. So my yes and no is no, I don't think he's changed in that regard, because he's still going to them first. But he comes to me when it gets like, I got to figure out how to get this rectified or solved. So that means at his core, he knows that I'll take care of him. He knows that I have his best interests at heart, and he knows dad is going to get it taken care of.
I think that at that age, he's still learning a lot, and of course, we want for children to have it what's best for them from all of their influences. But he's gonna get a few more years on him, and he's gonna have that perspective on his own to be able to figure out some of the things that you've stated. Because we do that. You get a little older and you go back and you do some self-evaluation on what these adults in your lives were doing, and whether it was great or not so great, you're able to step back and have some perspective.
First of all, I understand his situation. Who wouldn't want their father to be the go-to person?
Right.
Who would not want to aspire to have their dad as the person that evolves them, or just the acceptance or wanting them? That is what I wanted from my father. To be quite honest with you, when my father went to jail the second time, I was upset for selfish reasons. And let me explain what I mean by that. I was upset because he and I had grew to become best friends. And what I loved about it is I had not been raised by my father for 12 years. Then I met him and I saw that we were pretty much identical in the way we thought, the way we approached things, and things of that nature. So what I mean by I felt like I lost, I was upset for selfish reasons because I lost my cheat sheet. He was me in the future. So I went to him for guidance or to help me understand why am I thinking about things this way. And he was able to articulate how he had been in the same situations or why he thought that way and why. So I used him as my cheat sheet to advance me further because he had already thought those things out or been there. So it was a blessing in disguise, but I was upset for selfish reasons because I lost my cheat sheet, but at the same time, it allowed me and enforced me to evolve into who I'm supposed to be by myself. So I get it. And I talk to my son about that all the time. And I never allowed my wife or myself to speak ill about his father at all. Even when it got emotional and my wife might want to say something, I would cut it immediately. That is something for them to decide on their own or come to the conclusions on their own. I will just be consistent so that when the revelation comes, he will be able to reflect on who I was in his life so that when he's ready to come back, like the prodigal son, I'm going to be there with open arms and love on him like I still do now.
Exactly. That right there is exactly what I meant, that he'll have that perspective, just the consistency that you and your wife have provided without even saying anything, negative. He'll see it. He'll definitely see it for himself. But I think it's really great to hear the love that you have for him. I think Mrs. Fairley is on here watching, I believe. She's tuned in.
Yeah, I do see her beautiful self. Her birthday was yesterday.
All right, happy belated birthday.
Yes.
So next I asked you about the challenges. So what are some of the greatest moments that you've had as a father?
Oh man, do you have the time?
Give me a few.
No, honestly, seeing your strategic approach work, watching my children evolve to who they're supposed to be, not who I try to force them to be. I'm real big on them becoming who they are. One of my favorite moments, honestly, I'm very different. You'll find I'm very different. But one of my best moments was when my daughter was about 7 or 8. She picked out an outfit and she didn't want to know how I felt about it. Now, that might sound crazy to most people, but one of the biggest things to me, and I think as a father and as a parent, is to make your children and your spouse as independent of you as possible, not as dependent. For my daughter, who always, when she bought glasses, well, what do you think, Dad? And I will always say, you're wearing them. What do you think? She get a shirt. Dad, what you think about this shirt? I'm not wearing the shirt. What do you think about that shirt, Naja? I want her to like stuff for her, not worrying about what other people feel about her, including myself, because I need her to listen to that voice for herself and make her decisions based off of that, not based off of anything external. So the date that my daughter got an outfit and she did not ask me what I thought about it meant that my teaching had come to pass. She's now making a decision as an individual that's her own. So I don't have to worry about some guy that is influencing her to make a decision. I don't have to worry about me, her mom, or anyone else influencing her thought because she's strong-minded and she's able to do stuff for her. So things like that. Being able, like my baby boy, he is just like me, having the ability to be able to teach him why he feels and thinks and goes about things the way that he does, so that I can guide him so that he doesn't have to make the mistakes that I did to learn how to better understand myself. Those are the things that I love. I absolutely love. And I'm a teacher at heart. So just to watch and see, like I said, the product of my parenting, that is nothing better. Nothing better.
That's great. That's great. And those are great. That's a great thing to say that you are wanting to instill in your family. It's very selfless because sometimes people want people to be dependent upon them. So
I think about it like this. If I love my children and I love my wife, in the event that I die,
right,
I'm incapacitated, or I'm sick and I cannot do everything that I do right now, I have failed them if I made them dependent of me. The last thing I want to do is leave here and my wife is scrambling to find someone to replace me so that she can keep things above water. That is selfish, and that is not love to me. So I want to prepare them while I'm here so that they can do everything without me, and then they can look behind and have that wax on, wax off on moment and be like, wow, he prepared me for this, and I don't need somebody to fill this void. He's prepared me for this. So I'll do anything and everything for my wife as long as I know she can do it herself.
Interesting. That's great. That's great. So speaking of your wife, what role does she play in parenting in your family, and how has she influenced you as a father?
Wow, it's a great question. The role she plays in the family. She is that nurturer. I'm the hard one. She just honestly, she makes everything easy for me to do. All the things that I feel I need to do, she makes it easy, so it's not hard for me to do what I feel my task in life is. So that is a role that she plays. She is the best moon that I could ever have. Moon is up just as much as a sun, and just as important as far as it providing light for people to navigate at night. Yet it's slept on. The importance of it is slept on. So she is my equal in that regard, but she does it behind the scenes to where people typically they can be impressed by me or think I'm great, but had it not been for the moon, you wouldn't even be able to appreciate nothing that I'm giving. So that's the role that she plays.
Great analogy. Have you used that one before? Did you just come up with that right now?
No, she's always been my moon. So and she likes to play behind the scenes. So that's just what I think of my wife as.
But I'm saying, was that an analogy you just came up with, the moon thing right now, or you've always said that?
I don't have any opportunity to say it outside of now. So now is where it came
okay,
up.
Okay, because it was just good. It was really good. Like it came fresh off the dome, like a freestyle or something. That was real good. You're gonna have to remember that, and like use that. That was a good one. Add that to your speeches and everything. I like that. That was a win. She's somewhere like, oh. Yes, awesome. So, moving on, tell me, what do you want most for your children?
What I want most for my children is for them to be raised by me. And that's one of my biggest fears, that I'm not around long enough for them to be raised fully by me. So any fear that I have, I run towards it. So how do I address that fear? Every single thing that I do, even when it's free, I have it recorded and I talk about topics. So the things that I might not live long enough for me to be able to discuss with my children, it will be archived so that they can find out what dad felt about that particular thing. So I have a lot of archived television shows, radio shows, even this, I'll make sure that I have access to it, that if we did not talk about sex yet, if we did not talk about this yet, they still can and will be raised by me because they can refer to that particular thing.
Wow, believe it or not, so you're the eighth father, the eighth and final. So you're the second one who said that you do that. One has been journaling since his daughter was a baby, and she's 14 now, and now he has a newborn and he's doing it electronically. And now you're saying this. And the reason why I think this is so powerful, because this is so much foresight and thought that, you know, you men are putting into fatherhood. And again, we're, you know, all about shattering these stereotypes here. And so these are Black fathers who are thinking, you know, situation forbid that I'm not here. I'm putting all this stuff out here so that my children won't have these questions, that my presence will still be felt. And that's super thoughtful. And these are the things that we don't hear all the time. We hear the love and hip hop and whatever the mainstream narratives, and the Black men don't take care of their kids and all of that stuff. But this is happening on a daily basis. It's just the conversation is not being had. So we're here to, you know, push that out there, and for somebody to hear this and be inspired and to see, like, yeah, this is the type of thing that Black fathers are doing. There's just not a platform, an outlet to discuss it. And it's also something that it may inspire another man to be like, I never thought about that. So let me do that. But I think that's great. I think, and it's just so thoughtful. It really is.
Yeah, well, I mean, you got to think about the media, just other people. I do not want them to be raising my children. I really don't. It's bad enough when my children get home from school. I got to reteach them so that they're bilingual, so to speak, so that they know what's real and what it is that they need to do to pass that test. So it's just so many things that I want to make sure that they have the truth about it, so that they will be able to go through life where I have provided them with that information. They don't have to look for from someone else.
So this next question I'm going to ask you, I feel like you're going to have a twist on this, but I'm still going to ask it. So
okay.
Are there any specific challenges, strategies, or philosophies you have based on the gender of your children?
No. I treat them as individuals. If you think you have a one-size-fit-all strategy for children, I think you're setting yourself up for failure. You need to be a student of your children and provide them with things according to who they are. But at the end, the only thing that I'm consistent about is that my decision making and teaching is never based off of right now. Everything that is taught is intentional for their future, not for right now. I don't have, even though I might feel bad that I did not provide them with what they wanted at that moment, I'm thinking in the future. I also raise my children to be adults. So I start with stuff very early because it bothers me. I hear it all the time. Like, people are raising their children to become bigger children, to be a bigger child, and then an adult, they want them to just figure it out. And that bothers me. I'm raising my children to be adults. So I teach them to be, as I stated, independent, and I simulate everything so that in this household, they're prepared. So when they leave, they're already ready. I hear so many people tell their children, that's okay, wait till you get out in the real world. Why would you do that? Why would you not make the real world in here so that they're prepared, so that when they get to the real world, they're fine? And I oftentimes hear, I'm saying, well, he needs to be doing this by now. And like, he's just a boy, or she's just a child, or whatever. But every single time, and I challenge anybody that is doing this, like I said, raising their children to be bigger children, to ask the person, well, what is that cutoff age? They never know. They never know what that cutoff age is because they're just so caught up in they're a child right now. You are raising your child to be a productive citizen. I do not raise my child or my daughter any differently from my boys. I'm raising her to be a productive citizen. Outside of the fact that she sits down to pee and my boys stand up to pee, I'm not raising them any differently because they need to be a whole person so that they're not trying to find their other half. I hate that statement, my other half. I'm looking for other whole. If someone is your other half, that implies if they're gone, you're not whole. You're half again. My children will know how to cook. My children will know how to clean, wash clothes, take out the trash, understand the little things about their car that needs to be tweaked, whether it's a boy or a girl, so that they're not looking for somebody desperately to take on what they can't do for themselves. So no, I do not raise my children differently. If you didn't
I
gather
kind of
that from my
knew
entire
that, but I thought that that was a good thing to, I like what you said there. But let me ask you this. So what about the sex talk? Boy,
same,
girl?
sorry,
Because usually it's the sow your oats, wrap it up, and then it's keep
nope.
your legs closed.
Let's talk. The way my household is ran is if you're old enough to bring it up, you're old enough for us to talk about it. Because the worst thing that can happen is I say you're too young for that and you go get invites for somebody else. I don't operate that way.
But is there
If
a
that
different
conversation,
approach that you have for the boys versus the girls? Like I said, I'd say overall for the boys is wrap it up, and to sum it up, and for the girls, keep your legs closed. And these two
no,
entities are supposed to interact when one is being
no,
predatory and the other one is like
no,
fighting natural
no,
human urges. Like what?
no, no. It is the same conversation. If sex is brought up, I'm going to make sure that my daughter knows to be protected. I would prefer for her to wait, but my conversations with my sons are the same. Like when it comes to when you all right. So for example, my oldest son, I remember when sex came up, or I saw him watching porn. I took his laptop not because I caught him watching porn. It was bedtime when I caught him watching porn. So I made it clear I'm not taking your laptop from you because you were watching porn. Clearly, we need to have this conversation right now. But I'm taking this because I told you to go to bed. It was such and such time, and what are you doing up right now? So we had that conversation, and I wanted to know had he been masturbating yet or anything of that nature, and he said no. And I told him, I'm like, yo, I'm not saying you're not going to do it. I'm going to tell you right now, it feels fabulous. But the minute you have that experience, you can't unhave that experience. So, ironically, it was about a month prior to that, he saw a young lady who could not control herself, and it was because she was high. We were in the barbershop, and I told him, I said, remember that lady we saw at the barbershop? He said, yeah. Said and remember how we discussed how she was high and she was having a hard time getting herself together because she wanted to fix. And he said, yeah. I said, well, I remember when I was a kid, because I started very, very young. I said I was watching a HBO episode, and it was about a guy who had his first hit of crack. And after he had that first hit, it felt amazing. And he said he got addicted because he was chasing that same feeling, but he never felt it again. And that's what got him addicted, because he wanted to feel that feeling. I said, when you have your first release, it is going to be the most amazing feeling, and you are going to be chasing after that feeling for the rest of your life. I said, and it's going to feel amazing. So if you can hold off on you having that experience of feeling that, I highly recommend, but I can't say that you're not. So if you do, these are the steps you need to take when it comes to sex and things of that nature. We talked about protection and all that stuff. Talked about disease and all that stuff. I'm going to have the same conversation when my daughter gives me some kind of sign that she's having sex. Because the worst thing that I can do is tell her to abstain from sex, not prepare her for what she needs to do, and she either ends up getting a disease or having a baby because she didn't go about it the right way. Again, I'm a realist, and I'm an opportunist, and I prefer for her not to go that route. But at the same time, I am leaving her. I'm failing her if I don't equip her to go about it the right way. Now, what I do differently, and I wouldn't even really call this differently for my daughter. If you are a guy or she's with me, I promise you, by the time you get to the door, she's gonna stop at it. Um, uh, when uh, when we talk about opening doors and things of that nature, I do that for my daughter. I call my daughter and my wife beautiful every day, probably at least 3 to 5 times a day. And that's because I want them to be desensitized by the word so that by the time they hear it from somebody else, it does not impact them at all. My sons, I make sure that they see me opening doors for people, females. And I call all of my children, I respond to them, yes, ma'am, and yes, sir. And I do that with everybody because, for one, I don't want them to be unfamiliar with being respected. And two, I want them to think that everybody should be respected. That's pretty much it. You mess around, let me talk. You're not gonna get a chance.
It's all good though. It's all good. It's very good. It's very inspiring. And again, it's very thoughtful because some people are winging it. And I know to a certain extent, you're learning along the way. But what I like that I've heard from a lot of, well, all the men who I've spoken to, you definitely don't, you're learning things along the way, but you've thought about it. You didn't just boom, like life is happening to me. You had the foresight about, you had a plan, you have a game plan for this. And
Yeah,
so if things veer off a little bit, you still had a plan, you had directions, you know where you were trying to go with this, you have goals in mind with parenting. And I just think that's so valuable. And I think it's really great for people to see all these Black men saying that. Like if you're tuning in right now, I
no,
know you're loving this, and you can go back on my page to the first two on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and today. And I will be putting them on YouTube as well. But no, this is great. This is great. We're hearing Black men with the plan for their family, for their children, their wives, their family. Like I think it's good. It's good. It's not TV, good TV, but whatever you want to call it, is good media, definitely. And this is reality. This is the
yeah,
reality TV
yeah.
or media that we need to be having, this right here, because that other stuff is scripted anyway. Yeah, and it's a negative agenda. So I'm gonna ask you
Okay.
this now: if is there anything that you would say to, no, I'm not gonna ask you, is there anything? I need you to tell me, if you had a room full of men who were not active in their children's lives, what would you say?
Mm. I would, if they're not active, what I would do is, for one, I would get active, and I would start with an apology. And I say that because, you know me, I mentor young men 11 through 18 years of age on a weekly basis. Um,
Thank you.
and they miss their dads. So for one, get back in their lives. Two, apologize. Make sure that that's the first thing you do. Three, do not try to come into their lives and just try to discipline them. You can't discipline anyone effectively without getting respect first. Um, and lastly, I would tell them that, because this is truth, that they have equipped them to be a great father. What do I mean by that is, I would challenge their child to remember the hurt that they've caused them, if that was the type of child that they had or the experience they had, and use that as what they need to do or know what to do to prevent themselves from creating that type of hurt for their future child. So really remember and sit in the emotions and feelings that they've had from them being gone as the education that their father provided them for how to be a great dad. And to just be that open and honest, and that transparency will, I think, will allow them in. And then I would ask them to tell them and be okay with it. Anything that they felt or struggle with them being gone, and allow them to share how upset they are, allow them to share how hurt they are, and go from there, just to be open and honest with them. So that's pretty much what I would tell a room full of fathers that's not in their lives.
Well, that's great. I wish I had somebody writing that down in bullet points, because you actually gave them a plan right there, like some action steps to take. So, and I mean, those are real things though, because anybody thinking about re-entering into someone's life, you have caused pain by not being there, and so you have to be realistic that you're gonna probably deal with some resistance,
Yes.
and being committed to seeing it through, and don't go back if you're not willing to do that, because
Yeah, no,
it's worse to
definitely
go and
don't go
leave.
back. If you're not going to be consistent with your return, don't go back. Don't go back at all.
Yeah. Yeah. So since you brought up the whole mentorship thing, with everything that you have going on, career wise, all these family things, hats that you've mentioned that you provide to your family, what is it that compels you to be a mentor, and what do you get out of that?
Oh man. For one, because I'm transparent, I do it for selfish reasons. I'm just glad I have a good heart, because I do a lot of things for selfish reasons, and you'll understand better when I explain. Um, Me pouring into these children uh, allows me to possibly prevent one of them from robbing me or coming home to my daughter as the person that's with my daughter. So typically, when I make a decision, as I already told you earlier, I'm making a decision with the future in mind. So I'm pouring into these young men in hopes that I've just prevented myself from getting killed, my wife from getting killed, someone in my family from being killed, by instilling and pouring love into these young men. I also, my passion and I think my God given mission is to create better and healthy relationships. So if I can get them now, prepare them for their healthy relationship, that ultimately will impact a community, which also ultimately we bleed into states and nationally and ultimately the globe. So if I can assist them with having better relationships, I have created a better community, which in turn fixes a whole bunch of other stuff. Um, Fulfillment is what I get the most when I see a change is made, and I had those tough conversations with them. Like for instance, being an initiator if their dad is around of conversation, um, because if you sometimes the dad wants to be around, but he doesn't feel like they would want to deal with him because they've been gone so long. So showing that you're open to the relationship so that they can feel relieved enough to say, "Oh wow, I thought you didn't want to deal with me." Um, that is something that I tell the boys, and I help them to see how the other person could. Because I told you I'm holistic. I see it. I see it both ways. I'm not so biased that I see, man, he's wrong for not being in his son's life, that I can't see where he might be coming from in the situation. So I try to give them the whole picture so that they can at least put themselves out there, and I let them know that they're putting themselves out there. But at least now you have the right to be pissed. Whereas if you didn't do it and then you find out later he wanted to be in your life, you've missed out on time you could have had. So that's I love the fulfillment that I get from teaching, and I also for selfish reason, because that could be my grandson's child that he ends up with, daughter or grandsons, whatever. So I'm doing that to plant a seed that uh, prayerfully will harvest some protection and safety and just a better community for the future.
That is great. I know that when I put the call out to ask men to be mentors, some of the responses I got, even men who took the call and have done a great job, and I wouldn't even something I feel that I think I'm pretty empathetic and kind of in tune with people, but something I even heard this from men that I didn't think would have felt this way, that sometimes they were feeling inadequate, that they wouldn't measure up to be a mentor. And
Yeah.
I imagine that the same thing could happen when we start talking about fathers and not making excuses, but like you said, diagnosing things, um, getting to the root of it, then
Yeah.
it could this could be one of the causes. So what would you have to say to that when it comes to men dealing with feelings of inadequacy in the realm of being a father and or a mentor?
Um, you can't give what you don't have. They need to become students of themselves and figure out how to fall in love with themselves. Remember, I alluded to me having a bad or a low self-esteem from rejection and things of that nature. So they have to work hard at falling in love with themselves so that they won't feel inadequate and they know for sure who they are in a manner where they can present themselves in a way that would be loving. But you cannot give love if you don't have love within. So you have to first learn how to love yourself first, so that now you've mastered it and now you can duplicate yourself. So we're talking about some serious self-esteem issues, and you have to get to the root of where those things are coming from by asking yourself why questions until there's no more why left, because you found the root of what caused you to feel inadequate or hate yourself. When you get to that as an adult doing that, it's great because now you have perspective and you can see how that was a lie. And from that, you can pull that root out and grow from there. So it's important that they have some time with themselves, fall in love with themselves before they start to move out and do that so that they can fulfill those roles. So it starts with loving themselves first.
Well, strong J, sexual chocolate, all those things. I just dropped the mic. That was a very, very good answer. Thank you. Thank you. And I agree with that 100%. And so we have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable if we really want to move forward, because in order to do what you just said,
Yeah.
you really got to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. It's like you got to get in that mirror and strip down and
Yeah, buddy.
all the little
Oh
jiggly
my goodness.
parts and inside
Uh,
outside all of
yeah,
that, and just
yeah, yeah,
really do that. But that was a really good
yeah,
answer. And Mario says on here, the better a man loves himself, he can express that love to others. So yeah.
yeah. I'm because yeah, I mean, you said earlier that you appreciate my transparency. I'm transparent because I don't care what people think about me. I love me. So I can say anything about my life because I'm not worried about what you feel about it or what somebody else thinks about it. That's not going to change or impact me as a person. And when you can get so free that you can be transparent, that's when you plant seeds that will allow people to do the same and grow as well. So yeah, most certainly that is definitely, and it is tough to just be honest with yourself. But once everything is out and you're free, you are it life is so much easier when you're not hiding stuff.
Well, good for you figuring that out at 36 years young. That is great. That is great. I had another question, but I just think that was such a powerful one, and we're coming up on our hour, so I like that response that you gave, and I'm just
Okay.
going to ask you at this point: do you have anything that you want to add about fatherhood or parenting? Because people are watching now, people will watch later. You'll share it with people. So, is there anything you want to say when it comes to fatherhood within the Black community?
Um, just be intentional about what you're doing. And like I've said numerous times on this conversation, think about what that decision you're making right now is going to do for that child in the future. Raise them to be adults. For a good example, I see a lot of parents, if their children are combative or they're fighting, they say, go to your room, and they separate them. So what you just taught them to do is not resolve conflict, you walk away from it. I make my children stay in the same room together until they get themselves together, and then they can separate. So now I forced you to figure out what the issue is so that in the future you don't run from conflict. You address it until it's resolved. So just think about what decisions we're making, being intentional, and don't make decisions based off of your feelings and how you feel right now, especially when you're angry. One thing that my wife had to learn the hard way is to not discipline when she's angry or when we're angry. Because I remember I forgot what my son did, but she was like, "You're on punishment for a month." One thing about me, if I give a punishment or anything like that, that is what's going to go through. So now she want to let him off. Nope. What we say is, so now there's two lessons. One lesson is, when mom and dad say something, they're not going to bend. I don't care how good you were or whatever from that time span. That is what was said, and that's what's going to go. And now you learn to not make a decision based off of your emotions, because you know that I'm not going to let you bend on what you said, because we have to be people of our words if we want our children to listen to us and respond to us accordingly. So just don't make decisions based off you being emotional or trying to be their friend. Think about the future of that decision and make decisions accordingly. And also just raise your children to be.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, and lastly, just raise your children to be productive citizens. Don't get so caught up in the gender. Make sure that they are respectful and productive citizens. Make sure that they know how to do everything. You don't want to have a son because you thought that it's a woman's job to cook, that is trying to find a woman because he can't eat. Like, people are going to be, or vice versa. Like, that is so crazy to me to hear these things. And I'm like, oh, so the man is the provider. So while you're single, you can't pay your bills? Like, where's the logic in that? They need to be holistic people. They should be good at everything so that they can take care of themselves, so that they don't need someone. They're choosing someone.
Right. A complimentary, a sun and a moon.
Yeah. There you go.
So yeah, and even back when you were saying about you guys keeping your word and they know that you will keep your word, you're also teaching them integrity. Because in a time where, I mean, people who keep their word, we say word is bond. It's good to raise children who have integrity and to put more of that into the world. And like I said, parents, you have such an important job, because it's like this blank hard drive, and you're downloading all this information into this, clean space. And this can go out and, spew out viruses, or it can be something that is, very useful to the world. And you really have so much control as to whether this is the next big virus or if it's going to be a productive citizen, a great resource to society that helps make the world a better place, no matter on what scale. So,
and also, I'm sorry, I really got to push this in. Teach them to do the right thing because it's the right thing to do, not to get a reward. I see that a lot, and we wonder why these children are so entitled. Like, I don't do the big. I tell my children that I'm proud of them. Good job when they do a good job, but I'm not doing $20 for an A, $5 for this and all that stuff. They need to be doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do, not because they're doing something and thinking that I should get something for it. That's not reality. And you're setting them up for failure. So when they get a job, they're gonna be looking for an extra something because they did what they're supposed to do. No, you need to be doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do. Tell them that they did a good job and show them that you expect them to do what they're supposed to do. But don't be rewarding them for stuff that they're supposed to be doing.
Okay, so I got something to do, but I'm gonna go ahead and ask you this final question that I usually that I've asked everybody else. I had two questions, one
Okay.
of two, and I was going to end this, but I want to hear what you're going to say. So I'm going to ask you
Okay.
this question,
All
looking at
right.
my imaginary watch here. But let me give the pretext to this. We know that I've just interviewed 8 Black men who are phenomenal fathers. I am the product of a single father, as well as
Mhm.
uncles and wonderful Black men who have poured into my life and helped make me the woman that I am. But
Yeah.
and so when it comes to fatherlessness, that happens within every community, not just our
Hmm.
community. They
That's right.
just like to make you all be the poster children for that. But granted,
Mhm.
we're focusing on the Black community right now. So what are some of
Okay.
the things that you think Black men could do to help end the cycle of fatherlessness within our community?
Um, choose the person that they want to be with, as opposed to somebody that they want to be with just at that moment. So in your choice, you should have a list. I call it your non-negotiable list. You should have a list of morals, values, and characteristics, not physicalities. Morals, values, and characteristics that you want in a female. And I call it a non-negotiable list. When you choose that person, they need to have all of those things. You can't have 9 and they have 8 and you like, maybe this is the perfect not everybody's perfect. No, it's your list. Like, that's a perfect person for you. That's not a person that's perfect, because that will increase your chances of you staying with that person, which in turn will allow you to have a baby with someone that you're going to end up being with. But if they don't have that entire list, which again goes back to you analyzing yourself and studying and knowing yourself, then you should not move forward with that person. And that would increase the chances of us having families that have the everybody there.
All right, I knew I needed that response. I'm glad I did it. So we got love thyself, love yourself, know yourself, and choose wisely.
Yeah.
If those things were employed by us by men and women more often, we could possibly change the trajectory of our community. So love yourself, know yourself, choose wisely. Glad that I went ahead and asked you that. I want to thank you for taking the time to be part of this Conversations with Fathers series. Thank you for all your insight and energy that you brought. Great way to close
Thank you
out
for
this
having
series this evening.
me. I
Yeah,
appreciate you. Thank you for having
thank
me,
you.
sincerely.
Yes, yes. So for everybody again, oh wait. Before I go, what are you working on? Tell everybody about what you're working on, where they can find it, and how they can support you.
Okay, so my company is called No Love Incorporated. That's KNOWLOVE, No Love Incorporated. What I've created, as I told you, my passion is relationships. It's a simulator that allows people to self coach and counsel themselves through dating, relationships, and marriage, so that they can fail and learn and get their experience from the game, so that they don't have to fail and learn in real life. So everything revolving around my counseling for the last 7 years has been embedded through experiences that I've created in the game, so that they will be able to practice at relationships through a simulation, so that they can be successful at it in real life. That will be available for free probably within the next 3 months via app and via board game. I haven't had a timeline for that yet. But if you go to noloveinc.com, or just look me up at Edward Lavar, which is what the L stands for, Fairley, at Facebook, you can request my friendship there, and we can chat it up there.
Awesome. Okay, I'm glad to hear about all this progress and this
Thank
movement. That's great. Congratulations to you and your family with that. I know they're excited about it too. If you are, Sean says he needs that, so I'm sure he's gonna check you out with that. And
Okay.
everybody, if you want to stay in touch with my movement, you know to find clevercommunities.org. keep up with what we have going on with our youth and communities. And like I said, this was a series. I have spoken to 8 fathers in 4 days. So you can go back on my page and go through all of these different conversations with these men. They have dropped a lot of jewels, great perspectives, different backgrounds, but they all had wonderful things to say. I hope this is inspiring you. Again, it's going against that narrative that they like to tell us, because when you keep hearing that negative, you will believe it. So it's imperative to create our own narrative. So you can scroll through my timeline and you can get you some joy, just hearing what these men are saying about being fathers, about being husbands, just some wonderful jewels and stories in there. So go and check that out. Thank you to everybody who is tuning in right now, and to everybody who has gone and who's watched all the interviews. And if you've been watching, be sure to share them. Share them all. Share share all of these, with your network, because like I said, we can't have too much of positivity going around. So we circulate fights, and we'll circulate the negative things, and we want to talk about what Donald Trump did and didn't do, but put this out, share this, and make sure that people are exposed to these things. So, all right, Eddie, always a pleasure. We'll catch up another. I'm thinking about doing one with Black men and women, as far as like relationships are concerned, like how we relate to one another. I'm probably going to consult with you about that, because I think that's the next thing that I'm looking at doing here. So we shall meet again.
Proud of you. I love you. Take care.
So much. I love you too. You have a great evening.
All right. Bye.
Peace.